Marfoogle News going live. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, a.k.a. Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. We're going to go over the most alarming progressions in this next war, and this next war is one of the biggest you've ever seen. We're talking about multiple countries are popping off at the same time, and we're going to show you part of that tonight. There are a lot of pieces to this puzzle, but it's not something like, you know, Tomb Raider. You don't have to sit there for 15 minutes figuring this out. This is very, very obvious. There's a lot of folks that are finally talking about this, and the people that were not in the know are now going to be very, very quickly and unexpectedly. Trump says that U.S. is in, quote, armed conflict with the cartels after ordering strikes on the Caribbean. Now, this has inflamed, in fact, a lot of the left talking heads are saying that he can't declare a war without, of course, the Congress. But the thing is he's got certain powers that he can utilize. When we took out Soleimani and other, events like this, he has the ability to protect the country against certain threats, and he doesn't need Congress for that. And of course, if you connect the president of a country directly with the cartels, or at least that's what you're saying, then there's a lot of leeway there. And that is exactly what some people believe he's doing right now. He's taking care of Venezuela and Maduro through this. But he could be waiting until they actually fire back to say, hey, now they're actually attacking us. And then the Congress says, yeah, go to war. I don't know, but it is pretty crazy what is going on right now. And he does have a lot of power right now through this government shutdown, which AOC and Schumer actually helped in. They said, hey, they're not going to budge. So now it is a government shutdown, and the president has actually more powers in some ways. So this is a very, very, very concerning time, and most people are not even going to know what's going on. They're doing their 9 to 5. They're staying in their bubble like Bubble Boy. President Donald has declared drug cartels to be unlawful combatants. Remember, that establishment is really important, and says the United States is in now an armed conflict with them. According to the president's administration's memo obtained by the Associated Press on Thursday, following the recent U.S. strikes on boats in the Caribbean. The memo appears to represent an extraordinary assertion of presidential war powers, with the president effectively declaring a trafficking of drugs into the United States amounts to armed conflict requiring the use of military force, a new rationale for past and future actions. Remember, it gives them powers to do things that they normally would not be able to do without the Congress's approval. The president determined that the United States is in a non-international armed conflict with these designated terror organizations. Remind you that he is stating that Maduro is in bed with this terrorist organization, so you could see where this is going to go. We're going to talk about this, China, Iran, and all of the rest of the really, really insane stories that are happening in the last 24 hours. Right after this. We'll be right back. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. Before we get started, I just want to remind you, down in the description below, you can find a full bibliography of every single article, tweet, video, picture, document that we have here. That way you know exactly where we got these sources from. There is also going to be affiliates that mentioned during tonight's show. Those are purely our suggestions and our recommendations, and if you do end up supporting them, it does help us out. And again, it will also help you prepare you. But remember, all of those affiliates are highly, highly suggested right now, especially with what's going on in the world. All right, and then, of course, let's bring in my co-internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today? Dex.
Hello, Adam. Hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So, so the next piece here, obviously, the Venezuela stuff is all moving forward in breakneck speed, and then we have a warship that just joined up with NATO's new mission. And what is that new mission to do?
Exactly. The USS Berkeley, a guided missile destroyer, joined the Baltic Century mission. They joined it this week, according to inside information, or defense officials actually told the reporters this. The defensive mission is largely comprised of European assets, including ships and aircraft. The American P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol and anti-submarine aircraft have intermittently assisted the operations for the past 10 months. However, the new inclusion of the USS Berkeley in the mission is the first time a U.S. warship has been involved. So they're saying that this is to help blunt some of the undersea sabotage, and they're specifically going, looking for and having a presence to either thwart off that type of activity or be there to catch it in the act and prevent it.
So you can see where you have, of course, now a movement of military that is simply explained by their joining the mission to blunt these operations. I wonder why they are having now an increased presence as far as trying to stop this underwater cable mission and all of these different things that are going on. There are all sorts of cables that are super, super critical to the communications between, of course, the U.S. and Europe between other countries. This is a really, really big deal when you see them really, really pumping it up. Is that saying that they are either preparing for a response for somebody, or they are actually, they have intelligence that something is about to go down? Remember, if this goes the way that we think it does, everything will pop off at the same time, because that's the only way that our adversaries would be able to win. If they split the U.S. up into multiple chunks around the world, if Iran and Israel pop off, if Venezuela and Guyana pop off, if Russia and Ukraine pop off, if China and Taiwan pop off, if all of these, and North Korea and South Korea pop off, those are 5 areas where we have actually committed support to the other side. And when you have that, you have, of course, us splitting apart, us splitting our military. Every simulation says that we would lose. The only way that the U.S. would lose with our massive and powerful military is if we were split and fighting more than one peer-to-peer adversary. So 2. They even say we're prepared for 1.5 peer-to-peer wars, right? Isn't that crazy? And everybody goes, well, what the hell does 1.5 mean? I'm guessing it means a peer-to-peer war like us versus China, and a massive, proxy war, right? Or maybe even multiple proxy wars. But we're not ready for both Russia and China at the same time. Now, Russia, that's why they have put a newfound kind of, pressure on Europe. They know that this war is coming. They said, you've got to put 5%. Something behind closed doors was said to all these countries that made them go from, well, we don't want to pay, we don't want to put more than 2% or 3%, to we're spending 5%, to every last one of them spending this 5%. They are huge, huge amounts of money. And the countries that weren't paying up are now paying up in many cases. So this is something that is obvious to many of us, that this is happening right now. And this is because they know that Russia is going to have to be handled by NATO, or at least in most part by NATO. And of course, the kind of wild cards here, North Korea and South Korea, all of these things are popping off at the same time. So remember, it would happen, we would probably have an EMP or something, knock chaos or a civil conflict in the U.S. to have us in internal turmoil. We would have communications cut. We would have power cut in multiple countries, and they would cut the underwater cables to cut the underwater cables, and they would go after the satellites all at the same time. At the same time as this, they would also be doing cyber attacks around the globe. And if you don't think that they're preparing for this, I would highly recommend going and doing research on almost any country involved on our side if they are getting attacked, and if there are experts stating that not only have they infiltrated their systems, but they are lying low and waiting. So yeah, this is not a good sign. And then Dex, let's go over the Allies clash after Russian jets breach airspace.
Okay, so this one's kind of interesting. With the recent incursions that were happening, it's now been revealed, and this is coming from insiders that were granted anonymity and allowed to speak, but just speak freely, but they were only allowed to do it anonymously without naming their names. But these European officials are basically saying that Mark Rutte and the Estonian Prime Minister, Kristen Michael, got into it over the continuous Article 4 clauses that were being called. So as you know, we've probably reported 3 or 4, I think 4 Article 4s now. But Estonia, was making up more than one of them, obviously. And Rutte was arguing that if Article 4 were invoked every time Russia violated sovereignty through drone incursions, fighter jets, cyber attacks, and more, it would quickly lose the impact. So they said that they even raised his voice at him over this and sort of said, hey, we have to be cautious about how we present this process so it doesn't look like it has no weight. And I think that may be part of it. But the other part that I kind of go with is like, what are they going to do about it? They haven't done anything. Like nothing has come but a bunch of words saying, well, maybe we need a drone wall. Maybe we're going to shoot them down if we see them again. But there's been no response to the actions that Russia has taken.
So is it true that there is no weight to this? If they just declare Article 4 every single time and it just, another Article 4. Because by now, people and civilians and myself, I'm like, here's another Article 4. When before this, it was a massive deal when they did the first one, right? It was. Any time that they have done an Article 4, it was at a very heightened period. Now we are at a period where it's now 4 Article 4s in, and people aren't kind of concerned about this. The thing is, I think that there is weight to it, and I think that this is the way that they portray it, that this is all happening at once.
Since 1949, Adam, there's only been 9 Article 4s.
I thought it was 11. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So
9 times.
9 times, and then now is that including this last 4?
It just says in this article, since the creation in 1949, Article 4 has been triggered only 9 times.
Yeah, so obviously...
I would assume it includes these 4. So not very often, but all of a sudden we've got 4 in 30 days.
Yeah. I mean, how often is this gonna keep going? Anytime they see a mystery drone, if one of you puts up your DJI, are they going to do an Article 4? Because honestly, with all of this happening, it's pretty clear that there's some sort of thing going on in the back door meetings right now that most of us are not aware of. Even him publicly saying this, that would let Russia know that, hey, by the way, now it looks really bad for us because we're not doing anything. It makes NATO look weak. At least that's what I think. And before we move on, make sure to go check out EMP Shield. We've been recommending this one for years because this will protect your cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, generators, and even your home and even your ham radios and Starlinks against a EMP strike from an adversary or a CME from God or from the sun, right? MarfoogleNews.com/EMP. Make sure to use code MARF to get $50 off per device, and that stacks on top of all of their sales. You not only help our channel out, but you also prepare yourself for one of the most feared events in the United States and in Europe, because these events would knock down the actual foundation of our country. They say 90% of us would perish in a grid down scenario, and that's not because of explosions or looting or anything like this. It would be because the infrastructure for water would go down. So just a reminder, before you do this, I'd highly recommend getting yourself some sort of situation for water. Again, marfooglenews.com/EMP, and make sure to use your code MARF. Again, that's marfooglenews.com/EMP, code MARF. All right, Dex, let's go into Russia using deadly new missile upgrade to bypass Ukraine's Patriot air defense systems.
Yeah, so they appear to have upgraded its ballistic missiles to try to get around the Patriot defense system. The upgrade likely involves the Iskander-M and the Kinzhal missiles, which have ranges of 500 kilometers and 480 kilometers, respectively. These missiles follow a standard flight path before suddenly diving steeply, making interception by the Patriot systems difficult. So they're suggesting that these changes have been made to the ballistic missiles to try to make it much more difficult for the Patriot system to be able to respond to it. So is this a showstopper in the sense that it makes the Patriot system obsolete? I don't know, or if they're just going to have to do some reconfiguring on how that works. But it says Russia targeted at least 4 drone manufacturing sites near Kiev earlier this year, causing major damage. One of those targets was a facility producing Turkish Bayraktar drones that was hit in the end of August. During the strike, the Russian missiles evaded air defenses and also damaged nearby offices of the EU delegation and the British Council. So you remember when we talked about those specific locations being hit, which was kind of a big deal. Yeah. Those were the use of this technology that was evading the Patriot systems.
So what I see is that they're going to ask for more capable defense systems, and that's kind of freaky. Our Patriot systems are one of the most capable systems out there, and if these are beating it, then what comes next for Ukraine? And then we have Putin swipes back at Trump for calling Russia a paper tiger. This one's pretty interesting because when it happened, that was the 180 he did last week. And most people know that the media has actually criticized Trump for being too friendly to Putin or too nice to Putin or being friends with him or giggling with him, right? I've seen all sorts of headlines related to how well they get along, right? Well, all of a sudden, in one day after the escalator situation when he went to the UN, the EU. It was the EU, correct, Dex? It wasn't the UN. It was the EU. I believe it was the EU.
Yeah.
He went to the EU, and there was this day, and this matters because this escalator situation happened where somebody purposely stopped the escalator.
That was the UN. That was at the
Okay. So I was right the first time. The UN purposely stopped the escalator with him and his wife on it, which if you've ever been on an escalator that's even stopped in general, it's weird. It's discombobulating. But imagine being on a running one that stops right in the middle. Now, this was a security concern too, because think about this. If a president is on an escalator and say there's a window 3 stories high in a lot of these huge headquarter things, somebody could be on a rooftop 3 miles away, freaking watching that window, and then the president stops right there in that spot. That could be, something that was done on purpose so somebody could take their pot shot, right? It wasn't, and luckily it wasn't, but it was a very scary thing. Security didn't even know what to do. They thought it just misfired. Well, in that day, not only did they find out that it was on purpose, that people just didn't like him, so they stopped it, but they also turned off the actual teleprompter on him in that same 24-hour period. So he was pissed. So mind you, a lot of people thought maybe he's just angry, and probably because his wife was involved too, it makes you look stupid. Anybody who's on an escalator that stops probably jerks forward and just looks dumb, right? So I know most of you out there, if your wife was mistreated like that on purpose, you'd probably be mad too. But why this matters is because then he went in front of the UN and essentially had a fiery speech about how Europe is going to hell, about how all of this is going down. And in that same 24 hours, he called Russia a paper tiger. He says that they should respond to any kind of incursions. They should shoot them down if they come in. This was a big change. And some people think that it's on purpose because it's all part of this big plan that's happening. But most are looking at this how it is that, obviously something has changed. And maybe he was playing Mr. Nice Guy on purpose because they were trying to further an agenda as far as, not having this war happen. But it looks like that's all falling apart. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Dex, go ahead.
Yeah. And so Putin has really turned this one around. It's really funny when you listen to what he says. He says, a paper tiger. What follows then? Go deal with this paper tiger. In other words, if they're a paper tiger, what are you doing? Why haven't you just destroyed us? Why haven't you done anything, right? He then goes on to say, well, if we are fighting with the entire NATO bloc, we are moving, advancing, and we feel confident, and we are a paper tiger, then what is NATO itself? So he said, if anyone still has a desire to compete with us in the military sphere, as we say, feel free. Let them try, Putin said. Russian countermeasures will not be long in coming. Cool down, sleep calmly, Putin tells NATO. So he's basically saying, look, you want to call us a paper tiger, then what are you? Because y'all haven't done anything to us. And if we really are the paper tiger, then finish us off. And so that's pretty interesting statement for him to put out there and spin that back around to Trump and spin that back around to NATO for that matter. And let's look at what we just said a minute ago about the Article 4s and the fact that there's been no response and nobody's really doing anything. And they're just, having meetings and panicking and going, what do we do? What do we do?
You could do origami with the Article 4s. You could take those articles and fold them into a paper tiger. Because that's what they are, right? They're just on paper, right? They're not doing anything about it.
Exactly.
So with this, the cool down, sleep calmly. I don't. That's kind of, I don't know. It's creepy, but then it's like cool down, sleep calmly. But then it's not. It's like saying, hey, just chill out. You're all good. Sleep well. I don't know. The sleep calmly, is that kind of like, like sleep with one eye open type of thing? Like, oh yeah, no, sweet dreams or something. I don't know. That part kind of gave me the willies. And then U.S. to give Ukraine intelligence on long-range energy targets in energy targets in Russia. So this is a big deal too, because they're just publicly saying that they're going to help with the energy infrastructure targets in Russia on Ukraine. A couple of years ago, this would be absolutely off limits. And now it is absolutely in the sphere of battle. The United States will provide Ukraine with intelligence on long-range energy infrastructure targets within Russia, two officials told Reuters on Wednesday as it weighs whether to send Kiev missiles that could be used in such strikes. Now, mind you, Dex, Putin is saying that, hey, you guys haven't done anything. Well, on the back end, they most likely have, and they've probably helped with a lot of this oil stuff. They're trying to pretend like the oil refineries getting knocked out isn't affecting them, but Russian civilians actually have been saying differently. They are waiting for gas. They are having issues keeping, gas for the actual country right now because they've hit all of these major targets inside of Russia. Now, if they're going after the rest of them, after power plants and other things, and the U.S. is going to help, that's a huge escalation. Would you not think so?
Yeah, that's crossing one of the core red lines that Russia put out. So this is the U.S. not just doing it. Like we've said, we've been doing it all along. Like who's helped them with, programming missiles, who's helped them with, other things. It's always been understood the U.S. and the West was doing a lot of that, but it was never flat out admitted. But now if we're going to come right out and say, hey, the U.S. is just going to give them flat out intelligence on where to strike in Russia, where to target those missiles, and potentially give them the missiles like Tomahawks to do it. We're definitely crossing that major red line with Russia. So as far as an escalation goes, this is pretty significant because not only is it happening, but it's also publicly happening. So the statement is out there in the open.
Yeah, and which means that Russia or Putin will probably respond, probably Sergei Lavrov, probably Medvedev will probably make statements in the next 2 days, just a prediction about this statement and this claim. By the way,
he just said yesterday, we covered, Adam, he just said yesterday that this was one of the topics. He said, we want to know who's programming and who's giving the intelligence and the targeting locations to go after. And then boom,
when was that?
Today.
I didn't catch that.
I think it was yesterday. We talked about it in it was either Lavrov or I think it was him was making the statement about about the red lines specifically.
Oh, what was his other statement in that same piece? Do you remember? He was talking because he was
there was a few things he was talking about, but one of those was like, who is the one supplying it, who is the one, and will they need troops to program it, and who's going to give them the locations and the targets or something to that effect.
Oh, man.
Now here it is, boom, the next day, the U.S. is going to give out the intelligence directly to Ukraine.
I wonder if the president or Pete Hegseth or somebody was like, let's tell them who did it. Like, this is our response. Russia always responds, paper tiger, you haven't done anything. This is like our response to them saying that. Like, who's supplying this? Who's doing this? And then we come out and say, we're going to help them, hit these energy targets inside of Ukraine. I wonder if this is our threat, like our chest pump, right?
Exactly. Very, very well could be. But if it's public, that's a much bigger deal, and that's what it seems like.
Yeah, this is all big stuff. And then Persephone J, thank you for joining the fam. Thank you for joining as a member. Persephone, I hope you found your channel for news. I really appreciate that. Make sure to also thank your mods down in the chat below by dropping an M. Thank you, Chance. Wages, I saw Wages here tonight. And, of course, Jammer and Bobby Sue, thank you for being here every night. Thank you. And then China could bar U.S. service ships in new maritime dispute volley. Dex, what the heck is going on with this?
Well, as we recently had added charges to Chinese ships that were coming into port into America, China State Council amended the regulations on international maritime transport, and the state agency was reporting that they're targeting countries that discriminate or impose restrictions on Chinese shipping. Well, that's what the U.S. is doing. So the changes don't name any specific countries, but it's clearly a retaliation for the costly port fees aimed at making China's ocean trade with the United States far more expensive, and that are scheduled to take place October 14th, which is only about 12 days from now. So this now gives them the ability to turn around and start charging those specific countries, or let's just call it what it is, America, and potentially ban or charge such a high fee that we can't ship anything into China.
Yeah, so this is yet another movement towards, there's all of these different movements towards decoupling and pissing off each other. China, on the other hand, there's all of these comments right now by generals stating that China is making moves very quietly. Yesterday, we covered that, obviously, they declared that these ferries, it's very alarming that they are making 70 of these by the end of this year. 70 of these ferries that essentially act as beach-dropping invasion tools. We showed you they have 160-foot bridges on the front. I forget do you remember their nickname for those things? They call them landing ferries or something like that. They're commercial ferries that they've turned into war machines. They also said that they would be acceptable targets if this happens as well, with civilian crews and all. But yeah. And then Stephen McMahon, off to work, pray for divine intervention. Yeah, and I think a lot of people aren't really understanding the seriousness of where this is going to go and, where it could go. Before we move on, make sure to go check out Energy. And, of course, if you haven't already, you probably already know about these guys. A lot of folks got these during, CV and all of that. And it was an absolute kind of disaster with everything that was going on. Everybody was locked in. But the one thing that you don't have to worry about with Energy in this batch is waiting. Some people waited 7, 8, 9 months for their Energy because of the brand new contract that happened back then, which was the U.S. SBIR Phase 1 and Phase 2 contract with the U.S. Army. This is the same generator, reinforced with steel, heater for extreme cold temperatures, steel clips so you can quickly go from 5 batteries or 40 batteries down to 1 battery, take it with you. And, of course, throw it on your truck, freaking drop it off your truck. That's how tough this thing is. And have power at the ready wherever you need it. And that means before a disaster, charge your tools at work. Bring it with you in your work truck. This thing is an absolute beast. It can fast charge through the wall when you have power, or it can charge through solar panels when you don't. Again, this is the same specifications as the U.S. Army, so it is front-loaded in the USA. You're not going to have anybody turn it off remotely when we go to war with China or any other country that may or may not have a monopoly on all of this kind of stuff. So you want to have, if you want an item like this, you definitely want to stay away from, say, I don't know, a shell company that sells them on Amazon. Marfooglenews.com/energy, and make sure to use the code Marfoogle. Again, this is high quality. It's going to last a long time. It is built like things used to be built. That's why we sell it. Any of the affiliates on our show, including EMP Shield, including Energy, including Bug Out XP, all of these are things that we not only absolutely believe in, but we use ourselves and that we know are absolute top quality. So go over to marfooglenews.com/energy and make sure to use code Marfoogle. That helps us out. It gets you a giant discount. And of course, it is going to help you prepare for anything, including storms or disasters. All right. And then we have 2 taken out in this attack outside of synagogue in UK. And the attacker has perished. So he will not be answering any questions. Dex, do you want to go over this event that happened in the UK?
Yeah, so we've talked about these lone lone wolf style attacks that are supposed to be popping up from time to time, or especially here in America. It's been the big warning. We're starting, we're not starting, but we're continuing to see these things happen. The reason this one was so relevant or marked such an importance right now, outside of just the damage done, obviously, which is horrific. This happens on Yom Kippur. It's the Jewish people around the world mark the holiday of Yom Kippur as the holiest day of the religious calendar. So this event happened. It's very much like the types of events we would hear from. We heard in those warnings from Al Qaeda, from the Sarah Adams interviews, and other things that you've talked about, Adam.
Yeah, and I believe too that this is nothing compared to what it could be. Sarah Adams is talking about a coordinated event that could be 1,000 of these kind of events happening around the country all at the same time, and not just in our country, but also in Europe. So you would have all of Europe having these kind of events all over the place. It would be sheer chaos because. And that's the crazy part, is we've been talking about this over the last week. With that Pete Hegseth speech, it is really clear we're going to war. They are doing things. He just keeps reiterating. Dex, did you see the other clip of Pete Hegseth talking in his office about the generals and how bloated the system was? He keeps mentioning that we did this before World War II too. We did this before World War II too. He keeps talking about World War II. It's an obvious, homage. He's talking about the people that were in charge in World War II, and now he's in charge. He's stating we're doing the same thing we did in World War II, the same thing in World War II. Have you noticed that, Dex? There's not been a public appearance where he doesn't mention World War II, and this is the same thing we did before then.
Exactly, and so it should be obvious that the Department of War and our administration is preparing and planning and expecting World War III. Even though they say, "Oh, we're doing this so that we hopefully don't have any wars," they know it's
peace.
coming. They know it's happening.
Yeah, strength through peace, and all the drastic changes they're making. A lot of these are changes a lot of people agree with. As far as if you had your son in the military, you would want somebody that's capable right next to them protecting their life while they protect theirs, right? You wouldn't want somebody who was having an asthma attack and got the job just because of, who they were. You would want somebody that was the top of the class and could jump over a 50-foot fence to be the one that's supporting your son or daughter. So with that being said, there's a lot of changes that are happening that they're saying that are urgent. I mean, he used urgent, and the time is now, and this is got to happen this second, immediately. All of these key words were used hundreds of times over all of the 4 different press conferences he's done in the last week and a half. He's stating this is now, saying life and death. This is life and death. So if people are still not getting it, I don't know what to say. We've warned you guys for years, almost a decade. This is a war that has been building and building and building and building. And now we've gotten to the point where all of the militaries are actually up to par where they have enough to do this. They were looking at a certain mark. The thing is that public mark, that mark was not public. So we didn't know what China, their internal documents said that they needed to be able to do this. But there's been a lot of that has leaked in a lot of the things. That's why when they said 2027, they were saying that because they believed once they're ready to do this, they're going to do this. And with us in the way, they're never going to be number one. And it's very clear through their heavenly doctrine, or what is it called? It's heavenly mandate. In China's heavenly mandate, it's essentially religion. Xi Jinping believes that their actual fate and destiny is to be number one in the world. There is no number two for China. And that's something that goes back thousands of years for China. They do not believe the U.S. belongs here, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get us taken down a notch. Taiwan is just a step towards that. Taiwan, if they could take us out and Taiwan at the same time, they would. But Taiwan is strategic. Taiwan is for power. Taiwan is so they can get up to par with us and then pass us. Controlling that much of the ocean over there, that would do it. Many experts believe that would financially put them in a spot where they would be untouchable. Not to mention their advances in AI and in military. So, people that still think that they're backwards and everything's going to fall apart on its way here, they're not educated about what China is doing, especially with what they're doing with their military and how fast they're building. And then Venezuela.
Well, and as it relates, sorry, Adam, as it relates to this particular attack or attacks that could be like this, and like the Sarah Adams warning, where there's thousands of them, let's not forget how President Trump and Pete, to some extent, in those speeches, were very adamant about talking about protecting the homeland, meaning protecting here and protecting us from the enemies here that are not in uniform.
Yep, and thank you for bringing that back to and saying that domestic threats that are not in uniform, essentially saying that the military, right? So the events that could happen across Europe and the U.S., that there's already soldiers here. And it doesn't seem too much of a coincidence to me that all of the, very left-leaning states that have all of the people that went there, that those states are the ones that have military on the ready, on the streets with ARs. This is something that obviously says to me that it's not just about protests and this and that they're expecting something. These are the same states that would most likely have some of these soldiers living and start conflicts, especially with the lax rules and the lax things that have been going on. It's really, really insane when you start looking at this and saying, well, they're saying it's this, but if it is this, all of it would actually tie better than the truth. Like their narrative, if this was the case, everything would have the ring of truth far better than what they're saying it is. If they're protecting the Golden Dome, the border, the orders against invasion in plain writing, the comments about domestic threats not in uniform, essentially saying soldiers that aren't wearing the official uniform, which, again, they wouldn't be, especially if they're sleepers. And we're not talking about sleeper cells like out of the 007 Bond movies. We're talking about sleepers like they're straight up units that came over in this 4 years where I believe, in my personal opinion, our last administration had people that were not only on the take, that they were looking the other way and saying, yeah, come in. They weren't even not just looking the other way. They're like, hey, we're going to fly you in. So really insane to even think that might be true. Yeah. Dex, Venezuela hitting the rebel camps accuses the U.S. of these threatening flybys.
Yeah, so the threatening flybys were numerous fighter jets that had been seen and reported by the Venezuelan authorities there, flying over 400 knots in their area, close to their borderline. So that's very concerning on their part. This just came in from Puerto Rico Landscapes in chat. He said, Adam and Dex, I live in Puerto Rico near the base that the F-35 fighter jets are. Remember the ones that we had reported that they had deployed to Puerto Rico to support the Caribbean. They flew this afternoon. There's unconfirmed reports they were near Venezuela skies. Do you know something? So it's a great comment, Puerto Rico landscapes. And I don't know if these were those jets or not, or if they were using F-35s in this particular case. But it certainly is all in alignment with what has been going towards an escalation between the U.S. and Venezuela, or specifically Maduro, under the hat of stopping the drug trafficking. But a lot of us sort of think there's this idea that maybe there is the notion of overthrowing or regime change, or just taking, straight up going in by land, because we've even reported that Trump said that they will potentially be, targeting the troops on land. So that is a totally different scenario than what we've seen recently with the boats, and that will change and escalate things. But let's not forget, there's also like a $50 million bounty on the head of Maduro from the U.S. as well. So
he's got to look over his shoulder.
There's no love for him, that's for sure.
And the one thing we do know is Fugle family members are saying that they're moving possible artillery there, right? So if you're in Puerto Rico, we would love to hear from you, especially if you're right by what's going on. If you can, try to get video of what's happening publicly. You're not saying do anything you can't do, but if you can take a video from your house and see planes, send that. Take videos of what's going on around you. Just to let you guys know, I don't know how strange this is, but we have had military helicopters above us almost every day in the Seattle area, and there has been now jets flying over. And it's not, the summer stuff, all of the events like the Blue Angels and all of that, that's over. So these are our jets flying around. I got a video. In fact, I have one video. I forgot. I don't know if I posted this on Twitter. Maybe I did. But I was gonna have you listen to this. This is what I was hearing for 4 days straight. Let me see here. Let's see if I can find this real quick. Yeah. This is what I've been hearing 4 days in a row. Oh, my phone died. All right. But I'll post that, and I zoomed in. There's definitely a military jet, and it was not a Blue Angel or Blue Angel. But yeah, it's been strange. And if you guys are seeing this, it is great to have, because right before that, the B-2 mission that happened, you had people, I think in Mississippi, posting, and they're like, hey, this is weird. I've got freaking 8 or 6, B-2s right above me. And that was hours before, in fact, 18 hours or something before we found out what they did, which is they went to Iran. They did this flight tracking diversion where some of them went over here, and then some of them continued on all the way to Iran and hit those nuclear sites. So the public, we can team up and figure out a lot on our own without, sinking ships or something. Loose lips sink ships. There's a lot of stuff, because most of our other adversaries, they know exactly what is going on. If you can see it out up in the sky, they can too. And before anything else, make sure to go check out Jace if you don't have any antibiotics on hand. If we do go to war with China, they make 97% of all of the active pharmaceutical ingredients for these, which is insane. And they make 90% of all of the antibiotics in the world. It's insane. So make sure to go check out Jace, because you can actually get a kit discreetly to your door of all of the most commonly prescribed ones in a handy kit. Again, that you can also add things on like albuterol and other things, because you're talking to a board-certified doctor through a telehealth appointment on your cell phone, tablet, or computer. It's very, very easy. MarfoogleNews.com/Jason. Make sure to use the code MARF. In general, there is just a lot of just really, really, really bad events happening. We have to stay positive. We have to stay optimistic that divine intervention will happen. Funny Doers International says, can we read the Heavenly Mandate on the show? Actually, I think that's a great idea. Funny Doers, at least go over what it kind of entails and the history behind it. I actually think there's a lot of fun stuff in there. Not fun, but a lot of really interesting stuff that people would like. So great idea. Thank you, Funny Doers. Dex, thank you so much for your service tonight. I appreciate you.
Much love. Great job, brother.
All right, you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you to your mods. Make sure to go check them out on marfooglenews.com/friends. You have a great list of not only our mods, but also other creators that you should check out when you have time. All right, thank you guys. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro, where we say thank you to the people that matter most.